Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. It is the first day of fall. And unlike the last few days, which were a little chilly, the last couple of days of summer, it's actually warmer today. So, the temperature does not reflect the season. It's Indian summer, if they want to call it that. But yeah, some people think that's racist, I guess. Anyway, let's start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, interesting thing. So I caught the end of it, but it seems like the English Premier Soccer League decided no fans right now. And so I was catching the end of an interview, and it looks like I think the league has lost, 700 million euros or something. And
that's like $6.
It's a lot more than that. And there was an impassioned plea from like a GM basically saying, look, it's important that we test. It's important that we do all these things. And we're being kind of like not singled out. What was he sort of like was saying we're taking the brunt of this because of people out there not doing the right thing. And I thought that was an interesting take on it because I think that's right. I think it is up to the masses of people to do the right thing. And if they don't, then yeah, you're not going to be able to go to a game. Like that is the reality of life. And in this country, it's kind of like in the middle because some people are getting to go. But I have more respect for the unified ones that say, no, we're doing all this or we're not doing it at all. And I think that they've made the right tough decision, which doesn't mean in 2 months they won't change it. But right now, I think, that GM's, the way he said that was interesting to hear because it was coming from, a different country's perspective.
Well, London is cracked down a bit more. Boris Johnson came out for the next 6 months, right? No weddings above a certain number of people. No group gatherings above a certain number of people, and I think it's like 15 if I remember reading correctly. So even what you said, the Premier League trying to have any sort of fan attendance for a substantive period of time looks like it's going to be very unlikely.
Well, a little note here from Funky in the chat, which it shows the state of quarterbacking in the NFL. Drew Lock, who was the starting quarterback for Denver, goes down in week 2. It's not a season-ending injury, but I think that they said 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. And their fallback is that they've just signed Blake Bortles.
Yeah, I saw that earlier. They almost signed him last year, supposedly also.
Yeah, Blake Bortles is hideous. He's a terrible quarterback. Now,
you're talking about teams of 5 quarterbacks, Mike. There were teams with 5 quarterbacks.
Right, and none of them good.
But that's what I'm saying. Once you get past 2, it's going to be that way for most teams.
But Russ, I don't know who replaced Locke in the game on Sunday, but if they sign Blake Bortles, I'm assuming that means Blake Bortles is eventually going to start.
Eventually, yeah, and they'll probably run the ball a lot
once he learns the playbook. I don't know who their backup was. If somebody in the chat wants to tell me, go ahead. But it's sort of similar to goaltenders in the NHL. If your starter goes down, you're screwed. So
yeah, I think it's worse right now in the NFL because I think a lot of NHL teams actually have 3 goalies that aren't bad.
Jeff Driscoll, Mike.
Yeah, that's right, Driscoll.
Jeff Driscoll, who actually didn't play horrifically, but yeah, clearly not of the ilk of what they were expecting.
Well, that's a big endorsement there, Jan.
Coming from the quarterback play we've seen in our team lately, Russ, that is a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, but you know what? If Sam Darnold was on the market, if Blake Bortles is getting a job, Sam Darnold's getting a job.
Oh, no. Sam Darnold, listen, he would get a job in 10 seconds. It wouldn't even be a question.
Yeah, I don't know. I just have to say this, and then we'll start the show. In watching and listening to New York radio or the Michael Kay show on ESPN, which is on the Yes Network, I'm more attuned to New York and what's going on with the Jets and the Giants and the Yankees and other teams than I would normally be being in Buffalo. I find it hilarious how much they are burying and want Adam Gase fired.
Mike, nobody who's a Jet fan wanted him here to begin with. He was not particularly good in Miami. There is a reason why they let him go.
But we know why he's there now.
I can tell you, and Russ can correct me, I would say 90+% of the Jets fans said, why the heck him?
Yeah. Right. But again, Chris Johnson, who's still running the team, forged a friendship with him. So we know that that's why he had the job last year. And Joe Douglas wants him to lose this year. So that's why he's not getting fired yet.
and give me $1 for every time. Like every time I've heard people criticize Christopher Johnson for saying he's a brilliant offense.
That was a bad quote.
What are you doing?
I know.
Well, he's living off the Peyton Manning era when he helped be his quarterback coach and Manning had the big year. Granted, I would presume a large or substantial portion of that play was because of Manning, not necessarily because of the scheme that Gage supposedly helped him with. So he's traversing over that goodwill for way too long.
All you have to do is go to the home opener 2 years ago. Adam Gase didn't do anything to win that game. Tannehill broke a couple runs off that the Jets decided not to cover on, and that was pretty much it. Now look at Ryan Tannehill now with a decent team behind him. He looks like a different quarterback.
Yep. 4 touchdown passes the other day.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine, and we're all tied up in the series.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We'll wait to talk about Game 2 until Eck gets here in a couple minutes. So just some breaking news here just before the show. The interim tag has been removed from Bob Bugner, who now is the full-time head coach of the San Jose Sharks. Russ, I thought there was maybe a chance that they would dip into the coaching market because they really didn't play a lot better under Bugner than they did with Peter DeBoer.
No, but they didn't play horrible either. So at this point, why invest in another coach? I'm sure they took a questionnaire around to the players and the players like him. So fine. I mean, what this is an admission of is that Doug Wilson is admitting that his roster was screwed up and that, they got old really quick. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. And that, maybe with Logan Couture 100% healthy, with Erik Karlsson 100% healthy,
maybe a goaltending change of some sort.
Well, see, then there's the issue because I don't now know. I mean, I heard Pierre LeBrun on Toronto radio yesterday say that he's been told by general managers throughout the league that it's nearly impossible for teams to move salary right now.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
So if that's the case, then you're going to see a lot of what I always term crap for crap deals. Meaning, players with salary who aren't working out in one place being traded for somebody else in another place, and both teams hoping that those things work out. But I don't know who in the hell is taking on Martin Jones at 5.75 for 3 years, 4 years.
I'll tell you what I would do. I would call up Tretiak and see how much he wants to have some Zoom calls with Martin Jones to work with him. I would do something drastic like that. I mean, at this point, that's really all you can do.
Yeah, 4 years at $5.75 million for Martin Jones. I mean, the only thing I can think of is a team that is so a team like Ottawa has no future goaltender in there. They're struggling to get to the cap floor. You might have to give up a draft pick to get them to take Martin Jones, but if they believe that they can turn him around, then that might be a deal that they would be willing to do.
Okay, if they could get a number one draft pick out of it, and I don't think they're going to, but if they get a high enough pick, yeah, maybe something worthwhile. Like Ottawa's at least, if you talk about teams on different trajectories, and as odd as it says, as much as we've criticized Melnick, right, the player personnel department seems to be building something relatively decent there.
They are.
They augment it with the guys in this year's draft,
right.
And based upon what they have next year as well. Look, the goaltender is clearly the need for that team. If they can find someone who can be even passable, they should have a decent shot at making a run at the playoffs in about probably another 2 years.
I think that's fair. I think there's a potential of that. Now, maybe. See, what you have to hope is that after all this goaltending shuffle, that some guys really are left out in the cold, and maybe you can call someone like Craig Anderson and get him on a 1 year. That would be something that would help San Jose because I think they would take that gamble.
Right. Or a Cam Talbot or a Jimmy Howard or something.
At least you could have the games for Jones and hope that helps.
But part of that is waiting for that musical chair.
Oh, they're going to have to wait. Yeah.
Right. And seeing who's remaining and seeing who's desperate and trying to pounce then. But you would then have to make sure you're patient enough to wait that out, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I mean, right now, if you're Ottawa, you're. I mean, Anderson's a UFA, and he's 41 years old. Your goaltending tandem is Anders Nilsson and Marcus Högberg.
Yeah,
that's a winning combination.
Oh well, it's a winning if you're considering wanting to get in the lottery.
Sarcasm dripping.
I mean, and we just sort of morphed into Ottawa here, but I mean, they're in a great position with the number 3 and the number 5 pick in this draft, in a good draft. So they've got a collection of good young prospects and some players who I think have started to establish themselves, like Brady Tkachuk and Thomas Chabot. So, I mean, they're
building. They had a good draft last year. They have some prospects in the system. They have picks. They have multiple picks, I think, this year and next year in terms of the top several rounds. So that's a team you look at and you're like, you know what? If they have as good of a year this year as they did last year in terms of picking wise, that's a team. As I said, it's an upward trajectory, especially when you compare it to other teams that are in the league right now.
They're still going to have to sprinkle in veterans, and there will be a year where all of a sudden, if they're allowed to spend money, they'll have some capital to do it and all those things that they have. Okay,
the other thing, and X says he'll be here in a second here. The other thing that Pierre LeBrun just tweeted out, according to a league source, the current plan for the Stanley Cup, and remember, at the end of the year, normally the Stanley Cup goes to each player for a day, and normally they have a party or they do something with it. According to this, the cup is going to stay in the winning team's local market for the duration of the off season, and players and club personnel days with the cup will all be in market, subject to enhanced safety protocol. So they don't basically want Phil Pritchard, the keeper of the cup, to have to fly to Russia or have to fly to Sweden.
Well, here's a question, and I think we know the answer. So how did the cup get to the Jimmy Kimmel show? Did they just pack it up and send it?
I think that was a facsimile. I think that was a
facsimile.
I think there was because they have more than one cup.
So that was like a secondary cup that they shipped.
I seriously doubt that they shipped the cup from Edmonton to LA for the.
It made me think it looked really good.
Yeah, no, but
hand sanitizer. You clean it. You let it sit out for a day or so, and you're good.
We knew there would be something different because I talked about it a couple of weeks ago on my Sirius XM spot. I knew there would be a different protocol for the cup this year, and so that makes sense. And so players are going to have to go back to that market and plan something. They're not going to be able to have a lot of people. That's it. That's just the way it is. But you'll still be a champion. So at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Now, okay, we'll start the talk because X said he's going to be here any second here. Okay, so it was a tale of two games yesterday. First period, Tampa Bay, and I think I mentioned it yesterday, Russ, is that the momentum from that third period in game one might be something that Dallas is going to have to deal with because Tampa Bay dominated that third period. They didn't score any goals. Their level of frustration showed, but it did show that they could, I think, equal the effort level or even surpass the effort level of the Stars, who were just basically trying to play out the string. And Tampa takes a 3-0 lead in the first period on a couple power play goals. I didn't think any of them were really Khudobin's fault. The one was deflected. The one was that incredible pass from Kucherov to Palat. But then, it was the rest of the game was not a gimme. Dallas came back in the second period, and even though they lost the game 3-2, Dallas made Tampa pay a physical price, and that's what Dallas does. Even in a losing effort, they made Tampa pay for it.
But they overdid it. They woke them up. Like that game was right now. They were feeling each other out, and then they went overboard with the physicality to the point where the Alexiak penalty was just stupid.
Oh, the penalties in the first period were absolutely asinine. So right. Yeah, no doubt. But I think,
and I also felt like I felt like the third Khudobin goal was stoppable. Again, I can't always make an excuse for a goalie because there's traffic in front of him. When it went off the back wall, he never even got an idea of where that puck was going. And that was where you have to have a sixth sense sometimes, and the great goalies do. And I feel like, all right, but still, he's playing a great series, and he made some big stops after that. So that game is not on him. That game was on waking up Tampa doing the right things, Tampa power play being great, and Dallas now having to realize, okay, we need to dial it down a notch. because we played right into their hands, and Tampa buried the goals they needed to.
So the thing is, I think on the power play, you saw a little bit of a tweak where they started hitting the slot, but also going cross slot, which is something they weren't doing a lot of, and fix the spacing. B, these are two teams that have built up a really strong, healthy dislike for each other really quickly. I was listening to the radio broadcast because I was outside doing some stuff yesterday, and they kept remarking that how angry both teams are playing against each other, how there is a healthy dislike and an arrogance and kind of a hatred already in terms of the hitting, because you've seen multiple guys go into the box. You had 5 guys between the two teams in the box at one point in time yesterday, and both teams have ratcheted up the hitting level to a whole nother level than we saw in the first couple. And Dallas has been very aggressive in this series. Tampa matched them hit for hit yesterday. I think the hits were 51-50 yesterday, which is not normally what you would see out of Tampa. But Tampa decided to fight fire with fire, and Dallas made a couple of stupid mistakes early on. They were smarter in terms of the hitting, but they didn't limit the amount of hitting they did the last 2 periods. But Tampa Bay just hung on even towards the end, because Klimberg had a shot with under 3 seconds to go, and he shanked it a bit. But I
thought he broke his stick actually
to the final buzzer, even though it was 3-zip.
See, I think in that case that Tampa is playing into Dallas's hands, because Tampa is the more skilled team. They don't want to get into a knockdown drag out with Dallas. That's a game that Dallas can win. If they try to go skill on skill, then I think Tampa Bay is the much better team. But I mean, the adjustment that they made in the power play, it was not only structural, it was personnel, because they took Sergachev off of there, or Sergachev, excuse me. They took Sergachev off the power play, put Palat out there. They went 4 forwards and 1 defense. They went with a 1-3-1 structure, and they put somebody big like Killorn in front of Khudobin.
Yeah, they finally went in front of Khudobin, and that was a big thing for them. They weren't getting.
Points goal was clearly because of Killorn being in front of the net.
Yes, they finally were getting to the net. That was big for them because they weren't doing it in game 1. So that was a big thing. Vasilevsky rebounded because he didn't have the greatest game 1. We know that. This was a good game. But this was a game where I felt like Dallas can make some real good changes here and still be in control to some degree. I felt like I said, I felt like they played into Tampa's hands a little bit too much. And I do think Mike's right. Tampa is paying a physical price every game, every shift. There's no question about that.
And the guy who's, I think, paying the most of the physical price is Kucherov. I mean,
Kucherov is getting killed,
hammered, but he still kept coming back.
Oh yeah. No. I mean,
but you can. But again, if you're in the finals, right? Yes, there's a cumulative impact, but you see the goal at the end. You see the goal at the end of the rainbow, right? The cup is there. You now know you are 3 wins away from winning the Stanley Cup. It makes it a little bit easier to take the punishment than you did, let's say, back in round 1.
There could still be 1 or 2 games away from him missing a game too. I mean, that's getting close. And the other thing I was going to say, Mike, my feeling is still with the Stamkos thing. I feel like they're going to have to be facing elimination before Stamkos risks playing, or they risk playing him.
Well, supposedly they pushed him really hard at the optional yesterday, just to see how he would respond. Then they basically find out today how he feels. It sounds to me like they're going to basically use him as a 12th forward and as a power play specialist. I just can't see him going out there against the 4th line with Dickinson and. Oh
no, they'll hammer him.
They'll definitely hammer him, and I don't know if they want to make sure that he can withstand that before putting him in there. Now, a couple things that happened during the game. I know Coleman left the game, came back. Blake Como got hit in the middle of the ice with a pretty high hit. He didn't come back, so his availability for game 3 is in question. I don't know where Dallas goes, because if Faksa can't play, then you're talking about probably either going 11-7, or you're talking about going with a Jason Robertson.
I would prefer Robertson. I could see them going Dellandrea instead, but I would prefer Robertson because he's bigger and actually he can pack a wallop too, besides having a great shot.
Right.
But Dellandrea is the better defensive player, so they may. And he's got offensive upside, obviously, but so they may go for that. There's a possibility of that.
Now, Jan, I mean, what are your thoughts on Stamkos? Because I honestly, I think you don't. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea how close he is. If he's 50%, 60%. But if he's going to be strictly a specialist, if he's going to be somebody who, like a couple years ago when they brought him in for Game 7, and you saw how limited he was. if that's the case, and you have to sort of dilly-dally around that, I don't know if it's really worth it to put him in the lineup.
So there's a couple of things. So first of all, it kind of depends on who you're taking out of the lineup to make room for him, right? We thought Ruta wasn't particularly good yesterday, and I think he's going to get swapped out for the next game. Right. We're not sure exactly what Stamkos' injury is. I mean, but whatever it is,
it's a core injury,
right? But abdominal, is it?
I think it's abdominal.
So
it's a recurrence of the injury they had in February. He reheard it in around phase 2, and
so part of that is any quick motion could re-trigger it again, right? Which is hard to replicate in practice.
Right.
It's only game action. And Dallas, if and when he gets on the ice, are going to target him. They're going to hit him repeatedly. So you take the risk of putting a guy in, like anybody else, of course, but he's at accelerate and heightened risk of only playing a short period of time. You're going to have to pull him out again because he's gotten injured. So as Russ said, if you're not behind in the series or facing elimination, your best bet is to probably not dress him because of the fact you're taking an untoward risk that you don't necessarily need to take. And if God forbid he gets hurt again, then it trickles down to next year because of this shortened time frame where we may start the season again, where it could impact him being ready for the beginning of the 2021 season.
And Russ, something that's going on in the chat room, I think we should chat about just for a minute. The 2009 draft, there was zero chance that Victor Hedman was going to go number 1. Zero. Trust me. And matter of fact, after the first 2 or 3 years of Victor Hedman, there were a lot of fans asking if he was a bust. And they would ask me if he was a bust, and I'd say no, because it took him a little while to become the superstar that he is. He wasn't a superstar then.
Right. As with all big defensemen, they take a little longer.
Right. John Tavares was a superstar in juniors then. Yeah. With no question, the Islanders were going to use him for marketing too, and they needed a face of the franchise. No offense to Victor Hedman, but you can't use him to market either for face of the franchise. There's a couple of big reasons there. Even if you were going to redraft it now, yeah, you can make the argument, but where is John Tavares having bad years? He stays on this pace. He's going to be a Hall of Famer whether he wins a Stanley Cup or not.
I see. I don't, and maybe I'm overstating it. I have a feeling if Tavares was still with the Islanders, there wouldn't be this criticism. It's because he went to the Leafs, and it's now fashionable to attack Tavares because, he's the number 2 center behind Austin Matthews, who only scored 47 goals last year. Jesus Christ. But Tavares is a great player, and Hedman is probably the best defenseman overall in the NHL. I don't think you go wrong with either one of those picks. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. Somebody funky in the chat mentions Larry Robinson. I guess apparently Scotty Bowman made some comparison between Hedman and Larry Robinson. And don't get me wrong. Like I think Hedman is fantastic. You got to go a pretty long way to be as great as Larry Robinson.
You really do. I mean, Larry Robinson was the gold standard. He was, and I watched him so many times. And defensively, you couldn't get past him. Now, is Hedman better offensively? Like, is he a better athlete? Sure. There's no question about it. But Larry Robinson was a rock-solid defenseman who could get you points and log a ton of minutes also. Hedman's got a little ways to go for that yet.
And Robinson was extremely durable for most of his career. All the time in Montreal, he was logging 30 minutes a night, something like that. It was him and Lapointe and Savard. Hedman has had injury problems throughout his career. I mean, he doesn't take away from his greatness, but he has had injury problems, chronic injury problems.
Robinson was the number 1 defenseman on an elite Montreal Canadian team that had several Hall of Famers on the blue line.
Yes.
That's kind of where you kind of just have to draw the line. Look at who played around him. Look who also was on the blue line, and there was no question that Robinson was the unquestioned number 1 top blue liner on that defense.
And Ak, we'll get your thoughts on the game, but I just wanted to insert this.
Yeah.
So Cooper last night, he goes 12-6. He sits Bogosian. He doesn't bring in Coburn. He brings in Ruta. I think they sit Bogosian. If he's not hurt, I think they sit him because Bogosian is too damn slow, and Dallas is fast enough that he can't keep up. I think that's they could deal with that against the Islanders. They could deal with that against a team like Boston, who's not overly fast, but against a team like Dallas, who's got people who can burn. I think Bogosian was a liability on their blue line.
Well, I think Dallas is better at targeting defensemen too. Like it feels like they're better at, like last night you saw that they go right at.
They do go right after him, man. It's like sharks in the water. It
Yeah,
really
I mean they find the weak link out there and they go right after him, like bam, and that's good coaching. I mean that's really old school. That's when you see like an old school coach will do that, you know.
And Ruta was the partner for Hedman for most of the regular season, so there's a familiarity there.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, you can definitely see that they're just gonna. I mean, that's great coaching by Bonus. You know, by Bonus. He's just really. He's just. It's fun to see because it reminds you of like when we were kids, you know, watching hockey. Like that's what coaches did back then. There was a weak link out there who took advantage of it.
We'll see what Eck thinks too. I'm going to answer the chat room by saying, how is John Tavares on pace for a Hall of Fame career? Well, he's already going to catch up to guys that are 200 games or more ahead of him on the assist list. He'll pass Claude Giroux next year unless Giroux has a really great year. He's 15th in goals, and he's not even supposed to be a goal scorer. Yeah. He's on pace for that, guys.
Hey, Joe,
it's easy to – go ahead, Mike, sorry.
Hey, Joe, he's on pace to be a Hall of Famer because he left the Islanders. That's why.
No, I'm gonna disagree with this.
Wait, which part? Because he left the Islanders or the Hall of Fame pace? Just making sure.
No, well, definitely the Islanders thing. But because the Islanders, you know, he was very good with the Islanders too.
Sorry, Joe.
There's nothing wrong with leaving the Islanders for sure. But the thing I'll say is, no, I think he's he has Hall of Fame talent. And he's shown, you know, and his scoring pace is impressive, but we've seen other people like that too. And I'm not sure. I think he needs to do something like really.
I mean, right now he's got the same amount of points as Jonathan Toews. I get that Jonathan Toews has won all these cups. Yeah, it's not like Tavares has had the opportunity.
But that is a difference maker to me. Like
if
Tavares will have the opportunity. Okay, if
Tavares, just say this and we'll end this and we'll get back to the game. If Tavares wins one Stanley Cup in Toronto, it's worth the three Stanley Cups that Toews won in terms of the minds of Toronto fans. And remember, you know, if you're a star with the Leafs and you put up career numbers that are Hall of Fame worthy, you have a better chance to get into the Hall of Fame than it would be somebody who was playing in St. Louis.
Yeah, but you know, Tavares. I mean, obviously, he was famous wherever he played. I mean, he's a first overall pick. He's you know, he's that is definitely.
And he's still got 20 years ahead of him. That's the thing. Yeah. We're talking about a guy who's actually peaking more as a goal scorer these days because he's asked to do that.
Right.
Well, so here's the problem, right? With the move comes the accelerated pressure, and the fact is that he's scrutinized higher. Because of the fact that he moved. Right. Let's talk about it. Talk about basketball later, right? Kevin Durant moved. A lot of people thought he sold out because he moved. Now, if Tavares had been with the Islanders and the Islanders made a run through the Eastern Conference Finals, that's viewed as being greater to a certain extent than him doing it in Toronto because of the talent that surrounds him on that Toronto team. And granted, because he moved, now he has the scrutiny because they haven't done it, regardless of if he's the only one at fault. He's the one that's going to have the Klieg lights shined on him, saying, hey, you moved to win. They're not winning. You have to be blamed more so than some others.
I agree with that, but
I think they have to win in order for him to get in there.
But on the opposite end, if they do win, then he gets more of the credit.
Not necessarily. That's not.
You can't have it both ways.
Because if Marner or Matthews or anybody else or Nylander or anybody else is the reason, they're the ones who are going to get the credit, not Tavares. He's going to be on the list.
If he's a passenger,
if he wins the Conn Smythe, he'll get the credit. If not, he won't.
And here's Mark, and then I want to get back to the game here. But Mark says, you know, Sabres should have taken Svechnikov over Dahlin. That's the same argument here that we're making with Hedman and Tavares. And honestly, Dahlin has been very good for 2 years. He's 21 years old.
Yep.
He's going to be a superstar defenseman.
Yeah, no, that's And
in this league, I mean, as great as Svechnikov is, and I think he's wonderful. He's a fantastic scorer. He could be a 40 to 50 goal scorer for a decade. If Dahlin is as good as Dahlin is purported to be, if he's close to being as good as Hedman, he's worth more.
I mean, what would the Sabres be without Dahlin? The Sabres would have zero defense without Dahlin.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, like, give me a sec here. The Sabres, like a lot of things, but the Sabres, I mean, Dahlin's
a made a mistake taking Dahlin. They did not.
No, they didn't. Dahlin's a better defensive player than Svechnikov. No questions asked. I mean, Svechnikov is a really good offensive player and a really good player, but Dahlin's a better defensive player. I mean, it's the way he is. He's a better two-way player. I mean, and he will, and that's going to happen. I mean,
is Dahlin a better defenseman than Svechnikov is a forward right now? No. Is Dahlin going to be a better defenseman than he is? Possibly. And if he is, he's more valuable than a winger, than a power winger.
Exactly. I mean, and you know, Svechnikov is like I say, one-way player. Like, I mean, right now that's what he is. He's going to be good defensively, but I mean, Dahlin just brings so much more to the table. There's no question they made the right pick on that one.
I mean, remember, Hedman didn't even have 40 points for like 5 years in Tampa.
Yeah, no, there were people that really questioned that pick. I mean, there were people.
They used to kill me on it, Act. They used to be like,
I know.
Is he a bust? What's going on with him?
Defenseman growth is not linear. That's what.
Right, it's not.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah, what we've seen growth
goes up and down and up and down. It takes a while for guys to settle into their skin and become really good. And the problem is Monday morning quarterback, especially 2 years in, you have the immediate, you have a recency bias without necessarily thinking what's going to happen down the road.
Now, okay, I want to ask you this because you can be either black or white when it comes to this particular player, and they zeroed in on his antics on the ice yesterday on the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast. If I'm a team that needs a veteran guy, that needs a spark plug, that needs a guy who will do anything it takes to win, even if it's a little dirty, sign me up for Corey Perry, because he may be dirty, he may be filthy, but he does everything he needs to do to win, and that's what he did yesterday. I love him putting somebody in a headlock. I love him getting, I think he cup checked Hedman at the end of the first period. Do it. That's what you need to do. Do it.
I have Corey Perry as far as that stuff goes. Like, I think it is part of his game. He is very good at it. He is absolutely hated by players who play against him. There's a huge history in the NHL of players who are absolutely hated. I mean, I go back to like a Thomas Sandstrom and the Rangers or whatever. Like that's kind of what he reminds you of sometimes.
Dave Brown,
Ken Linsman,
but Sandstrom to me has like more like Perry in that he has like the skills that Perry had offensively. Linsman was like a very good player, but really a playmaker more than anything else. Yeah, and Sandstrom also would do so many little things. Like Linsman was dirty behind the puck, and Linsman was like Bobby Clark, like dirty. He'd be dirty at, and who else was like that? Like Joey Koster was that way. But Perry is straight out, flat out. How cool was it that he to me, my favorite moment is when he screams at Hedman. They showed that on the Hockey Night in Canada thing too. I was watching that broadcast, and he comes they show it in slow motion, and Perry screams full tilt at Hedman as he skates towards him, like he's a banshee coming at him. And it's and you got to realize when you think about this is in an empty arena. So can you imagine what this sounds like in there? Like the impact that has in there. We've all been to practices and seen the when players, how much you can hear players talking. Can you imagine what it was like?
Well, Craig Paquette lost his mind. I mean, literally lost his mind. Yeah. I mean, to the point that it was almost, and it was the reaction that Perry wanted. They almost got a 5-on-3 power play there. They came within this close of getting a 5-on-3 power play with that, because he just gets underneath the skin of any team he plays against. And I mean,
he had to change his game, right? He went from being an offensive weapon, who was a premier scorer in the league playing with Ryan Getzlaf,
right,
to a guy whose numbers have dwindled substantially, and for a way to stay in the league, he's morphed into this type of player now. It's during the regular season, he's not going to be overly productive, but in the playoffs, when everything matters and you can get guys off your game a bit easier at times when you shouldn't, he has a value at this point in time. But during the regular season, that's why he signed a 1-year deal for the amount of money that he's making. He's not going to really produce a whole heck of a lot.
No, and I mean, it's possible that he will, re-sign with Dallas, but it's possible that he could make a little. I mean, I don't think he needs the money anymore. He wants
the cup. He wants the ring. That's what he wants.
I also the last thing on Perry is I do think that also what he went through with his injuries and all that stuff. It was tough. He went through a lot of stuff.
It was tough.
And and he signs this big deal and then gets hurt right away, and he feels like he's a big disappointment. I totally, I mean, it's funny because all you need to do if you want to know what Corey Perry's about, ask a Kings fan their opinion of him.
Right.
You'll get.
Joe Pavelski talked about it the other day. Pavelski faced him a million times. He even said it's weird that I'm doing an interview next to Corey Perry.
Yeah. I mean, Kings fans that I know absolutely despise him, like beyond. They think he is the scum of the earth.
And this is why this series promises to be a great one, because there is equal hunger on both sides. Like if Boston was playing Dallas, Dallas would be much hungrier of the two teams. Or no, excuse me. If St. Louis was playing Dallas in a final, which obviously wouldn't happen since they're both in the West, but if a team that had won the Cup recently was playing Dallas, Dallas has Pavelski, has Perry. Perry hasn't won since 2007. Pavelski's never won. Sagan won as sort of a support player with Boston in 2011. Ben has never won. All these guys are hungry, and Tampa is equally hungry because this is the first time they've been to the Cup since 2015. And if they don't win now, I don't know with the revamped team that is going to, because they're going to trade a bunch of players or lose a bunch of players in the offseason. They're not going to be the same team. So there's massive hunger on both sides. And I think this is going to be a war.
Yeah, for sure. Lindsey Hofford has been fired by the Coyotes. I don't know if you guys talked about that yet.
Not surprised.
He's the assistant GM there.
I mean, again, you think about everything that's going on there, that was going to happen.
Yeah. There's still more. And I hear there's more coming.
Hofford was in the Leaf organization during I think it was while Lamoriello and early in and then he got let go for unknown reasons. So
this one I think we know.
Yeah.
No, this is just part of the
cleaning house
fallout.
They're cleaning house.
Part of the cleaning house. I want to talk some rumors as well here because that's what kept me from you guys for a long time and might get me off here at any moment because there's a lot happening. So I want to start with Ilya Kovalchuk, which is a really surprising because I know, Russ, I feel the same way. But
Russ, tell me how you feel.
We can debate all day long or we could debate for 5 seconds and determine flat out that Kovalchuk might not be an NHL player anymore, which I'd kind of how I feel. But that doesn't stop the fact that there's interest in him. Montreal, of course, said when he left, Montreal loved him there and said when they traded him, that he was welcome back. And now I'm hearing that the Devils are very interested in him, and the Devils are very interested in making a big play for him. Apparently, a lot of this is being led by Mark Recchi, who really likes him a lot. And Recchi, tried to even convince the Penguins to bring him in there last year, I was told.
Well, this is the thing. In both situations, in Montreal and in New Jersey, Kovalchuk will not play the role that he played in Washington, which was a support player, third liner. And Russ said it very accurately. He wasn't going to do well in that. In Montreal, after he was traded from LA, and in New Jersey in New Jersey now with their sort of stripped down lineup, he's going to be a top 6 forward. He's going to be on the number 1 power play. He won't be that in most of the places he would go. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, if New Jersey is looking to do with Kovalchuk what they did with Wayne Simmons last year and give him a 1-year deal so they can get to the cap floor, okay. And if, this guy is a guy who got us to the Stanley Cup final in 2012, great. It's not going to get you anywhere. But
it's a very sentimental type thing because for New Jersey fans really liked Kovalchuk a lot. Like my Devils fans, that we talk to that, I mean, Russ, one of our buddies, Michelle Kenneth, would often talk about how good Kovalchuk was in the locker room and how important he was.
There's no question. He definitely was a leader at that time. Yeah. And now he's a passenger. Like, I don't know why you would do it. If you spend more than $1 million on Kovalchuk, the joke's on you.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Also know there's a lot of Devil fans who are still upset the fact that he left, even though him leaving that year, considering what the cap ramifications were, worked out a heck of a lot better than if he did it the following year. I mean, he's paid them an enormous amount of money.
And there's also debates on what went down with that, Jan. Like, and I think Devils fans to just throw it on Kovalchuk is not necessarily right. There are people who they'll never admit to this, of course, but that there was a sort of an arrangement beforehand that the Devils knew he wasn't going to stay for the entire contract, which is, of course, is highly illegal and cap circumvention and all that stuff. But I don't know, so I don't know if I buy it. I'm not making any accusations, but there's all sorts of things out there about this. So I don't know. Like I don't think Devils fans should necessarily be pissed off at Kovalchuk. I also think it had to do with his wife. There's a lot of stuff that went on there. So just the whole thing of it is the Devils might be interested in bringing him back. Or the Devils are interested in bringing him back. I should say that I was told by a very good source for sure. So I'm surprised. I'm a little surprised.
I mean, Kovalchuk's back in Russia right now. I heard he was at the Askarov shutout the other day. I see on Twitter he's running a camp with Kaprizov.
Yeah,
that's all great, but that's it. He's a name in Russia. He should not be in the NHL anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see it, but at the same time, who knows? I mean, who knows? So that's something. The other thing is, the other thing I was working on right before I came on here was Lundqvist, as well. But we can get to this question if you want to first.
Yeah, Mob Talk Radio asks, it's obvious Jim Rutherford is having issues moving Matt Murray. Isn't the timing crucial at this point? Well, yes and no. I mean, they would have to qualify him because he's a restricted free agent, arbitration eligible. So that locks you into something, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be paying him because there's always a hearing, and then he could be traded or they just agree to a 1-year deal. But I think they don't want to go into the season with both Jarry and Murray because they're going to lose one unless they trade one of them before the deadline. They're going to lose one in the expansion draft to Seattle. So ideally, I think Rutherford wants to move Murray now before next season. I heard, I don't know if you heard this one, and I heard it from, I think it was Elliot Friedman, of talk of a Devin Dubnyk for Matt Murray deal between Minnesota and Pittsburgh, obviously with Guerin's connections to Pittsburgh.
Right.
Dubnyk is a UFA, I believe, at the end of the year, so that would give them a number 2 behind Jarry, who's a veteran. Yeah, he's 1 year at $4.333 million for Dubnyk. So that would give you a veteran 1B for Jarry, and then he's a UFA, and you don't have to protect him. And Murray could be the goalie of the future in Minnesota under Guerin, unless they're not sure that. I mean, I know they have a goalie prospect, and it was a Capo Cajonen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if they think that he needs more time, then Murray in Minnesota might make sense, but.
I don't think it's crucial, but yeah, like Mike said, it would be ideal if they could, but right now teams are strapped. So if it waits, then the deadline or before the deadline is going to be when it's crucial. Again, you might go a month into the season and then somebody has an injury and they're desperate, and then Rutherford's right there and you can make a trade.
But this is the issue with Murray. He's going to want a long-term contract. He's going to want a long-term for whoever he's traded to. He's going to want a long-term deal. He's got 2 Stanley Cups on his resume. He's not going to take a cheap deal, and that should mitigate the return that a team has to give up for him.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends, Mike. It depends on whether or not. I mean, yes, he has that, but right now in this dynamic right now, no goalies are going to get long-term contracts. I mean, Markstrom's having a tough time getting a long-term contract, and he's. Coming off a Vezina season.
Well, he might have a shot if the musical chairs comes to an end and there's nothing out there and he sees that he has bargaining position. But right now, given the plethora of names that are out there on the marketplace and the flat cap, he's not. And also, since he's arbitration eligible, right? So he'll get a bump. Right. But the team does still have a certain amount of hold upon him, so he's not going to be able to push as much as he may want.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of other options potentially available right now.
Well, now, the goalie domino feels to be Markstrom. That seems to be the thing that's doing everything, because Markstrom is tied to Demko, and Demko those are 2 very valuable goalies.
They're in demand for sure.
But everybody wants. So once we have to find out what happens with Markstrom, I think, before a lot of these goalie things play out. That's the issue.
Markstrom might be also tied with someone like Holtby, because if Markstrom goes to Calgary, then Holtby can't go to Calgary, and then you don't know where Holtby is going to go, if anywhere.
And there's, I mean, that to me, the goalie thing is really being blocked by that right now. It would be very good if Markstrom signs before, obviously, even before the draft. That would be great to get things moving, but it looks like this could go right out to the end. So I don't know. That's going to put teams in a weird spot. If you're going to make a move for Matt Murray and you pay a lot for him, all of a sudden, you might be overpaying for him right now. You really might be, in terms of what is available, because
I think I'm safe in going out on the limb and saying that I don't believe that Rutherford's getting a first-round pick for Matt Murray.
No, but also I think what X's saying, without saying it, which is something that I was going to say before when you were talking, Mike, is let Pittsburgh set the market for Murray. Let him pay him. Then I'll trade for him. Then I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah. That's
the only thing that's risky there, Russ, is if you pay him too much for somebody's taste, then you're stuck.
Well, if Pittsburgh pays him too much, they're stuck with him anyhow. But
Right.
why should I set the market for Matt Murray when I'm getting him in the trade? I should wait until the market value is set for him.
I think
that's why you're going to wait on Markstrom, and that's why you're going to wait on some of these other goalies.
I think that they actually were probably going to do first is sign Jari to a 2-year bridge deal before they deal with Murray at all. But they want to.
I don't think they should do it. I think they should.
That impacts your bargaining position, though.
Right, I would never do that.
And they could get Marc-Andre Fleury back.
It definitely impacts your bargaining.
There are all the rumors out there that Pittsburgh could get Marc-Andre Fleury back as a backup. So
that's a rumor. I mean, again, a lot has to happen in the world for that to happen.
I mean, really, all that has to happen is Murray has to,
I don't even think a $5 million Marc-Andre Fleury is worth it right now. Based on, I mean, look at his number.
3. If Vegas ate 2 of it, you'd say yes. Give me more.
Yeah, no, it is kind of because I mean, Jari's not going to be that expensive right now. I mean, he's going to be
over 3.
He's going to be over 3, but you're a Stanley Cup team. So when you think about, okay, if you have $8 million or $7 million,
that's the big question. Are they a Stanley Cup team anymore?
Well, they think they are. I mean,
they think they are, but we're not sure anymore.
So in their heads, I think $5 or $6 million for your 2 goalies is reasonable.
Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?
We'll see.
Listen, by the time they know that answer, Rutherford's going to be on the golf course somewhere.
Now Lundqvist for a second. Lundqvist is another. I was working right before I came on here.
You talked to Henrik? Is that what you're going to say?
No, I did not talk to Henrik. Not today. I didn't.
Oh, not today. Okay.
He was transfixed by his baby blues.
I can't. I get lost in his eyes. I talked to people very close to the situation though, and it looks like Lundqvist will. There's a very good chance they're going to buy him out if he doesn't retire, or try to work out a deal. And they are still talking to New Jersey, and everyone laughs at me about that, but it's still a team that they're talking to, and it's a team that fits. It's a team that he doesn't have to move for.
He has to agree to it. That's the big problem.
He has to agree to it, but there's Lundqvist set up the deal. Like Marc-Andre Fleury, when Marc-Andre Fleury agreed to go to Vegas in the beginning, that was like such a big deal because Marc-Andre Fleury was a Stanley Cup goalie going to an expansion team. Everybody thought that was a death sentence, right? I think when you look at New Jersey. And when Lundqvist sits and looks at New Jersey and looks at what's happening around the NHL, you can make a case that New Jersey is a little bit like that Vegas team was. Like,
have you ever heard Henrik Lundqvist talk about the Devils? It's pretty close to Wayne Gretzky.
I get it. I get that
process.
They're all a Mickey Mouse organization, though.
Yeah, I mean,
I get that, but at the same time, you go if he looks at the young talent they have, looks at he doesn't have to leave New York, he can stay in New York. And he looks at like 1 year. Okay, I'll go there. I'll see what happens. Maybe they catch lightning in a bottle. They've got young talent. We all know that last year. Some people were picking on to make the playoffs. Even this year,
the Devils.
Yeah, last year with all the moves they made in the offseason, some people view them as a dark horse playoff.
They did. That was remember. They looked.
And then 2 weeks into the regular season, people realized that was a stupid idea.
But in the second half of the regular season, the Devils were the 3rd or 4th best team in the Devils were good in the second half of last year, guys.
Sure, but I mean, there's a lot of teams,
and that there's no reason to think that they can't move that over into this year.
But here's the problem. The problem is, okay, you're going to bring in a 38-year-old goaltender who's going to be a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt, who's well respected in the league. You're going to bring him in to take time away from a young goaltender who finished in the top 6 or top 7 of the Calder Trophy voting.
To teach a top young goaltender, I mean, there's a Lundqvist has, the Lundqvist has to make this like it. You got to understand what Lundqvist just went through. He went through the situation of being one of 3 goalies, being scratched and sitting on the bench, in New York. That shot his ego down a little bit. He's got a good side.
I know, but you know what? Larry Brooks makes a good point that I want to make again, too, because I tried to say it to Mike again the other day. If the Rangers buy out Lundqvist, and I didn't include a few of the other buyouts, they have $12 million of dead money.
Yeah. I mean,
That's a lot of dead money.
No, it's not dead money, but
I'm looking up on Cap Friendly right now. He has an $8.5 million cap hit. If they buy him out, they only $3 million. $3 million.
Which a lot of that's going to go to play Alexander Georgiev because he's a restricted free agent.
Ooh,
There's a lot of that money that's going to have to go to pay him, given what he's making now. Even if you say half, that's still you're not saving an enormous amount. You're saving, but you're not saving substantive amount of money by making.
Why not trade Mark Stahl to the Buffalo Sabres and eat some salary? That's what I would do.
If Buffalo was interested, you have to willing. Plus, I think he's also got a no movement clause.
Yeah, but I think he would do it because his brother's there.
Right, he might, and maybe a move you make.
If the Sabres signed Jared Stahl, then you could have, because Jordan is in Carolina, then you'd have, 3 brothers. What the hell?
No, but I think
brothers all on one line.
I mean, I think it's like, it's Lundqvist. I get what Lundqvist is. You guys know Lundqvist better than I do, but the reality is there aren't that many options for him out there. Really, people are saying Colorado is an option for him possibly.
No, I don't think so.
I don't see it either. I just don't. I don't think so. And that's a situation where they have 2 goalies. Really, I mean, we know what happened this year, but are they going to hold that on Francouz as like he's a terrible goalie? I don't think they're going to say that.
Yeah, but because there's so many goaltenders out there, there are better options other than spending $8.5 million in cap on Lundqvist.
Right,
well,
unless you're New Jersey.
Your population base of where you can send them in general is limited. Then couple that with the number of available other options that are there, and it reduces your ability to move him. The only thing that's been come up is he's already been paid. His salary this year is only $5.5 million. He's gotten $1 million in the bonus already, which means his salary is only $4.5 million. Which is why if you're going to move him to a team that's got to hit the floor but doesn't want to pay a lot of money, a team like Ottawa's name has come up in the past. If you can get him to waive the no movement clause, which is probably going to be somewhat unlikely.
Why would he go to Ottawa and not New Jersey? I mean,
they would, because they may not want to move him to New Jersey and have him in the same division.
Right.
And it's possible if they trade him to Ottawa that he just says, "I'm retiring" or "I'm going to Sweden."
Yeah, I don't think he goes to Ottawa.
Well, again, perfect storm. He would have gone for London for the year, and the Rangers would have probably been very happy because that was the rumor that they were hoping was going to happen, that he'd retire, play a year with his brother in Frölunda with Joel, and then they wouldn't have to be on the hook for paying him his contract. And they also wouldn't have to deal with the fact that part of it, he's a proud athlete. There's no question, which is why it's made him so great. But they also have to balance it with the long-term goal of him being an ambassador for the team. And if they buy him out, that could end up impacting whether or not his desire to come back as an ambassador for the team, especially in the short term.
I think, is it possible? Yeah, right. If he's going to come back as ambassador for the team, so you guys are saying, you won't move to New Jersey because you don't want to move him in the division. Isn't it possible that if that's the only place for him to play, you would do Lundqvist a favor and send him there?
If he's willing to go there.
If he wants to.
In essence, he holds a lot of the cards here because of the
I know for sure.
Right? You could work out all the deals you want. If he says no, your 2 options are, okay, keep him or buy him out. That's it.
Right.
I honestly, you could say to Lundqvist, "I will sign you to a 5-year, $5.5 million personal services contract to be our ambassador, so you lose no money, but we can't afford you as a player any longer."
Well, the other thing that you got to remember, what else comes under great scrutiny is if you buy him out, as an example, the next move you make and whatever you do for that season is always going to come back to, is this why you bought Lundqvist out for this? And that is going to be something that will follow Jeff Gorton around, even if he's not ultimately the one who's making the decision 100%, and it's a group decision, it will still fall on Gorton.
But you have 2 other goalies. I mean, it's like that's the reason you buy him out. We buy him out because we have 2 young goalies. I mean,
right. But this is
it's a little different though, Eck.
Correct. This is more traumatic to the New York Rangers in terms of their history than when they dispatched Giacomin to Detroit.
Yeah. At this point, it is.
Only one thing, Thomas Boyle and Joe Morello, there is no recapture penalty. He signed his contract under 35 years old.
Right. Correct.
The old thing, if he retires, the Rangers are on the hook for nothing. They have no salary cap implications. They save $8.5 million against the cap.
He signed at 30. I think it was 32 or 33.
All right. So next, I want to get into Jágr and how I think he's going to return. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that.
And Randy, Mike touched on this. They save $3 million this year, basically in salary, if they buy out Lundqvist, based upon this year's salary cap hit.
I want to talk Torrey Krug for a second because I did some research on this one as well. And, obviously Detroit's the name that keeps coming up and people think he could go there. He's from there. We get that. But an odd name that came up with the Torrey Krug again. This is like the focus point of today. We're staying in the Metro Division. Is the New York Rangers with Torrey Krug, and I was surprised to hear this name with Torrey Krug. I just, and I talked to somebody who's very close to this thing. If I tell you who it was, you'd be shocked. But it's like there's no question that the Rangers have actually interest in Torrey Krug.
Well, I mean, Gordon was in the Bruins organization. Yeah. I'm sure they're going to talk to him. But I think after they talk to him, they're going to realize they can't afford him.
Right.
So you're going to pay Torrey Krug $8 million to be your number one pair defenseman alongside Jacob Trouba, but you're not going to give Tony DeAngelo $2.5 million less to keep him because you don't have the cap room to go.
Well, here's my thing, Dan. You're right.
It doesn't make any sense. Look, I love Krug, but he's honestly 29. You know what? If I'm getting a guy who's 23, 24, yeah. If I'm getting a guy who's 29, I think it's a very silly move.
All right, I'm going to throw my 15 years of rumor experience in on this one for a second and say
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying my personal
I agree with everything you just
said. I think it's a bad move to make as much as I love Torrey Krug.
Everything you just said, I agree with based on based on the parameters you're talking about. But here's the thing about these rumors, and this is what the thing about rumors are. If this is the case, there's something up with DeAngelo. Like that's where my head goes immediately.
Well, there's definitely something up.
The money
talked about
pay other guys,
right? But maybe they're looking at DeAngelo like they don't want him. Like maybe they're saying.
I would say this after all the talking that's been done about DeAngelo, and you do some digging. I think they're split on him. I think they like what he's done there. They got him on a steal. They got him on a steal of a deal, right?
Yeah.
So everything they got out of that deal was gravy. Last year, completely unexpected, probably the amount of points he got. I knew he'd be a good NHL offensive defenseman, and he is. Now, the question is, with everything else that he's bringing you, do you trust him long-term? And I think there's still a lot of teams that don't trust him long-term.
Right. Let's just say this. If Jeff Gorton had unlimited buyouts, they would buy out 3 players this season.
Yes.
They would buy out Stahl, they would buy out Brendan Smith, and they'd buy out Lundqvist. But they don't. They've already used 2 buyouts on Girardi and Shattenkirk. They've got 1 left. The one that makes the most sense would be Lundqvist because of he's making 8.5 or 5.5, so it'd say $3 million.
Right.
Unless they find a team to trade Stahl or Smith to clear their salaries out, there's no way they're in on a big UFA defenseman.
And I do want to say this: it's not political views because I see Joe is asking that. I mean, the Rangers owner is a Donald Trump supporter. It's not that; it's the outspokenness part of him. That worries.
It's the inability to step away from situations where he's triggered or challenged on Twitter. And then having, I'll call it the maturity, but having the wherewithal to step away. He's gone back and removed stuff and apologized after the fact, as opposed to just ignoring. Now, also he had issues, remember, before he came to the Rangers, both in Tampa and in Arizona, which is what paved the way. He supposedly, according to what David Quinn has said and others have said, he has matured, especially on the ice.
Yeah. Defensively,
he still struggles in his own zone. He's really good at zone exits. He's really good at triggering the attack. He's got to get better, but the issues he has in terms of the inability to basically have Rabbit not hear everything and learn to ignore everything hasn't happened yet. Then that, coupled with his political views, especially given the environment we are in, is what causes the issues.
Here's my thing about this. Okay, there's something more to this because I'm gonna I'm just gonna say that I don't agree with his political views. Doesn't matter. And a lot of hockey people do. There are a lot of Trump supporters in hockey. That doesn't matter either.
Yeah, but they would have.
No, let me finish, please. The reality here is this: some of this stuff that's being thrown on DeAngelo is probably unfair. Like that, and I really do believe that. Like I think that he is a hothead for sure. He does have an attitude. He does bring a certain cockiness to him. And what you're seeing is the clash of his generation and the hockey culture.
Right.
Like you're seeing that to I think that is definitely
all right. Hold on. There's some breaking news here that I was hearing rumblings yesterday, and this seems to be true. If Tony DeAngelo's radio show WYT Free Press voted for him in the heart, and he did get a heart vote, that is what I'm talking about. Why the Rangers have paused. So,
right. No, and I'm not saying
those kind of shenanigans they don't like.
I'm not going to sit there and say, that's horrible or whatever. But I'm not going to.
It's not good.
No, but let me just say this. I think that the Rangers as an organization would have just as much of a problem with D'Angelo and his outspokenness if he was dating Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as he is as being a MAGA guy. I don't think
no, you're absolutely right. It has nothing to do with his political affiliations. Honestly, I want to say that what it has to do with is the culture of hockey and whether or not you're going to I mean, this is why people call PK Subban a bad locker room guy. It's like, and he's not. I mean, the reality is, I mean, PK Subban has had issues in locker rooms too. There are times when he gets too cocky and too confident, and he acts like hockey is weird, man. There's a weird culture that goes behind the scenes.
Well, let's put it this way: if the Rangers had signed D'Angelo last year to a multi-year contract, which that was on Gordon for not freeing enough room, he didn't trade Nemesnikov until into the year. Didn't have anything. If he was making the $1.5 to $2 million, this argument wouldn't be happening. The problem is now he's a restricted free agent with Arb rights, and you have to determine how long you're going to lock him up for and how much money you're going to give him. Look, in person, I've met D'Angelo. He's a really nice guy. But the problem is you watch your Tone podcast, which actually is pretty fun, pretty good to listen to. The guys he associates with himself with because who he's grown up with creates issues. He has the historical perspective, and the view was, yes, some guys posted. He had some racist comments from when he was a kid. Right. Part of that has been attributed. Anthony's been on the show saying just the nature of where he grew up in Philly. And that's why the Flyers passed him. And that doesn't excuse it. But when you add all this together, then you got to decide, how am I going to allocate my money because I only have a certain pool of a flat cap? That's the problem. If the cap went up to 85 or 86 million, I really don't think a lot of the stuff you're hearing would necessarily be an issue because you'd have the funds to be able to pay him now. With a limited amount of cap space, all of this gets factored into the mix. And yes, it is the dichotomy between where athletes were in the 80s and 90s versus where they are now. They are more outspoken. They have more power. They have the ability to free press, which may not have been even the case even 10 years ago because of the environment we live in.
And it would be an issue, Jan, but I agree that it wouldn't be. This is the thing. It would be a behind the scenes issue if you didn't have to worry about the salary aspect of it, but it would still be going on. The fact of whether or not they're going to decide whether or not to sign him or not forces it to the forefront because it forces it like, okay, this is what we're going to have to look at. But it would be there. Trust me. And he's not there are lots of players we don't even talk about that have the same kinds of issues, but they're not. But there's not something going on with their salary. There's not something going on with that.
But where he is right now contractually in his career is also a factor. He's in his fourth year. He's got 3 years until he's a UFA. So I don't think he's interested in inching 1 year at a time toward UFA. He wants a multi-year deal, and he's not going to get it from the Rangers because they don't have the cap space to do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's his own show, by the way. I don't think it's his own show that voted for him, but because some people are alleging that, but still, someone voted for him for the hard show.
The podcast he's on wouldn't have a vote. I mean, that's
no, but you never know who they're affiliated with.
Well, again, he may have friends from where he grew up that may have decided to vote for him again. Yeah. But again, you can't necessarily blame D'Angelo for that, right? If you want to blame somebody, blame the guys who decided to vote for him, not him.
I know, but these things follow him, and that's the problem. The Rangers don't like that stuff. They don't like the outgoing.
Hockey doesn't like that stuff. It's hockey in general. It's like, and there's some of the issue is, and sometimes that is hockey is his own worst enemy with this.
Sometimes, maybe that vote came from Washington.
It's like to me, like the idea here is that and PK. Someone said in the chat room that PK's issues in the locker room or what the issues PK's had. I really honestly don't believe have anything to do with his race. I want to say that. No. Because people always assume that PK doesn't fit in because it has nothing to do with it at all. It really. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know exactly, but everything I've ever heard, people love him. Like I know. In Montreal, when he was originally, and then when they said he was like a locker room issue in Montreal, I had a couple good friends that were in the locker room in Montreal who said that was the most ridiculous rumor in the world. He was the nicest person in there and completely full.
It has nothing to do with him being not nice. He's a nice guy. He's a good teammate. But the problem is that when PK is in the locker room, it's the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, and PK. He's the center.
I don't think that's it. I think that they're disputing it, Mike. I think what it is.
When he played well, that was less of an issue. Last year, his performance suffered.
Right.
That's why it's easy
that's closer, Jan, because there is this hockey
how much charity work he did while he was there also that completely gets forgotten.
There is a hockey mentality, especially among Canadian kids, that they are not cocky if they're not playing well. Like that is what they do. They can be like, and some captains on NHL teams, I'll throw Claude Giroux into this, have this problem where they're really good leaders and really good captains until they're not playing well, at which time they feel like they can't speak up in the room. Subban will speak up all the time. And that's okay. And that's like what most sports are like, but the reality is in hockey, that comes off as wrong. That's where PK's run into a situation. The sport is so slow to change. I mean, like the stuff that we've all seen as like bloggers. I mean, just this sport is so slow to like move forward sometimes.
I do want to say that, Anthony, you can't blame me.
What happened with Ted Lindsey, right? Ted Lindsey had tried to create a players' association.
Right.
Look how the NHL blackballed him.
Oh my gosh.
That mentality has carried forward even to this day, even
Bobby
though
Hull
70 years ago.
Look at Bobby Hull and WHA. There's stuff that's still like, I mean, there are stuff, and it's not if a white player acts this way, no, that's not true. We're talking about white player right now, in D'Angelo. I mean, there's plenty of guys. I mean, and there have been plenty of other guys. I mean, Yager, people had issues with Yager at times for this.
Well, there was reasons. I witnessed why there was issues with Yager early on, and then by the time he became a Ranger, he was a lot more mature.
Yeah.
I think unless we want to talk about any more rumors, I think we should mention some before we go.
Go ahead.
The awards?
Well, yeah, actually, we should do the awards. I mean, we didn't.
Well, you already kind of mentioned it in the backdoor way there.
I mean, the awards were pretty much what we all
get 3 votes for.
Right. There was nothing odd about them. I thought they were.
No,
I really thought the Makar Hughes vote should have been a heck of a lot closer. In my opinion. I think people did not necessarily see below just how good Hughes was and just how much he meant to that team. And Makar was good, but I really thought the vote was going to be a heck of a lot closer. And McKinnon and Draisaitl and 2 of the ballots not being in the top 5, there is something eminently wrong with those votes.
Yeah, no, I agree. We do have to look at who votes for these things sometimes.
I mean, with the underlying stuff with Hughes, besides ice time, which, by the way, even in the playoffs, he was one of their biggest ice time guys, zone exits, points.
Yeah.
Would they be a playoff team without him? Not to take away from Makar. Makar is a hell of a player. But honestly, a lot of people don't watch the Canucks games. That is a problem.
Right. And to me, there was a little bit, and it's funny because one team plays on, because Hughes plays on a Canadian team and Makar plays on an American team, but Makar is still Canadian and Hughes is American. And that's still – we've seen this many, many times over the years when 2 players are we think are neck and neck. If one of them's Canadian, they do tend to win out. And I think there's still more hockey writers maybe with Canadian bias, which is surprising because it shouldn't be that way. There's more teams in America, but I still see it. We still see it all the time. I think that played into it. And I also think that, Hughes' performance in the playoffs was so outstanding too.
That doesn't count.
It doesn't count, right?
If you go to the underlying numbers, you see just how good he was this year. It's the same argument we talked about when it came out. Look, I was biased for Panarin, no question. But I got to be honest with you, McKinnon, after what he did and how he carried that team during the regular season, when they had Rantanen out, when they had Makar out, they had Land. I mean, you name it. How many guys were out? I really thought McKinnon probably should have won the Hart.
I thought he should have won the Hart too, but I thought either one of them. Draisaitl's season was phenomenal. What Draisaitl has done, and you can sit there and say that Draisaitl's a German, McKinnon's a Canadian. That should have gone the other way, if my theory is true. But I think Draisaitl, this is a case also where Draisaitl, in this case, Draisaitl is playing in Edmonton with Connor McDavid. People are seeing Draisaitl all the time on TV. Probably more than they're seeing McKinnon even. So I think
I'll give credit to the writers that only one gave Connor McDavid a first place vote. That's refreshing because honestly, if it wasn't Draisaitl, I mean, there's no way that McKinnon. I don't think McDavid should have been in the top 5. I think there were 2.
No, I put him in the top 5. Stop.
No, I'm serious. He didn't have as impactful.
So who would you have 4 and 5? You'd have Malkin in the top 5, I assume.
It was Draisaitl, McKinnon, Panarin, Pasternak. McDavid 5th, Hellebuyck. I would have had Hellebuyck ahead of McDavid.
Okay, I can see that. I would have had Malkin high up also because he had a pretty darn good year as well.
I'm not saying I would have put Austin Matthews ahead of McDavid, but Austin Matthews finishing behind Jack Eichel, who missed the playoffs completely in a 20.
I mean, I'll tell you who my 5 were. My 5 were Pasternak, Draisaitl, McDavid, McKinnon, Panarin. Those were my 5.
I would have probably had Helly in my top 5.
Let's just mention this before, and I suggest people read this because it was an excellent column written by Emily Kaplan at ESPN, along with our buddy Greg Wyshynski, interviewing 9 players who were not named. They were, just they kept their names out of it, but asking them about the things in the bubble and what was going on in the bubble. And one of the common themes in this was they did not get everything that they were promised by the NHL in terms of amenities, in terms of this, in terms of that. They got in there and they felt a little let down by what the NHL. And okay, they got through it. It was great. I think the playoffs were fantastic. This tells you one thing: this will never happen again. They will. Yeah,
they're not going to do. But I don't think
we don't need to have it happen again.
Well, hopefully not. But if they won't.
And it will happen again if it needs to happen again.
I don't think it was fully the NHL's fault. We knew, look, we talked about the amenities thing. We knew there was going to be bitching about that because every league bitched. But I think at the end of the day, when the winning cup team is out on the ice and there are some families there and others that aren't, that's when you're going to start hearing the griping more because that's when it's really going to hit them.
Well, what I'm saying is they will not go to hub cities and play and have, it will be closer to what Major League Baseball is doing or the NFL is doing, traveling to cities. Like you said yesterday, double headers where a team plays 2 games in 2 consecutive days and then they're done for the rest of the year in division or outside of division. That makes complete perfect sense, but they will not go and sequester themselves in a city for weeks on end. They will not do it ever.
No, they're not going to do it now.
No, I don't. I disagree with you guys. I think that they don't want to do it, but I think do it. What?
I don't think they will do it.
You think they would cancel the season before they did it again?
No, I think they're going to.
No, because what if things aren't that as bad right now, guys? You can sit there and talk about playing in front of your own home arena. But remember, at the time this decision was made to do this,
I get that.
That wasn't the case, So if things get as bad as they were then, and are in the same spot again, yes, they will do it again.
Right now, I'm saying what is going on is Major League Baseball is now they're doing a bubble for their playoffs, but Major League Baseball and the NFL are traveling to cities.
I know, but that's right now, and I get that. I'm just saying that God forbid we get as bad as that was, but but if it does happen. It will, and I mean, we can't say never on it is all I can say.
No, you can't say never.
I mean, the decision to do that is not ideal. It was never ideal. It's never what they wanted to do.
But I think they would have a hard time.
Yes.
Remember the last time the vote kind of went through really quick? Right. This time it will take days and days and days and days of deliberation before that vote goes through.
And lots of trying to sway people.
Yes. That vote will not go through nearly as quickly as it did.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, it depends. I mean, the vote went through quickly because that was the only option. I mean, if there's other options, yeah. But if there's no option, is there no other options? I mean, listen. Hopefully, we have like a vaccine, and by the playoffs next time around, we're pretty good, But we don't know.
Here's a good parting line here. I guess he's doing his media interview. Bill Armstrong, the new Coyotes GM, quote, "I didn't come to the desert to get a tan."
Yeah. There you go.
That's good. Well, he already did something today, so
we'll see what happens here. But I think we're going to start the season just like baseball and football is doing right now. I think that is how it'll start, and hopefully it'll end with people in the stands in the playoffs.
Yep.
That's what we can hope for.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic approach.
Yeah, I mean I think that's where they want to get to. But I think that in order for them to do that, it's going to take the NHL is going to have to do some serious stuff because there are some teams.
But then that'll be another year of $1 billion in losses, and that means the cap won't go up for like 5 years.
Correct.
Right. And there's going to, and I think the NHL, some of the richer NHL teams are going to have to help out some of the lesser NHL teams to make this work.
Wow.
I know. No, because I do think that's going to.
Dream on.
You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Oh,
revenue sharing.
The big market teams will say, "Let them die." That's what they'll say.
Yeah, and it impacts the league as a whole. So
It does.
This is a nice kumbaya, but I'm telling you, it's not going to happen in this league.
Nope.
It's not.
If it doesn't happen, we will lose 3 or 4 teams.
I mean, we're going to lose some teams. It's going to happen.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? It's going to happen.
I don't think
right away.
because I think the NHL realizes that things are going too well for it, and they're too well set up for this thing when it returns. I think it's worth it to them to keep these teams alive through this.
That's all it needs is 3 more months of losses, and that could change everything. I wouldn't lock yourself into that.
I'm not locked into it. It's just my opinion. We'll see what happens. I mean, it could always happen, but that's what we just don't know. But at the same time, I think that there does seem to be at the top of the league enough feeling that they want to keep everything going like it was because they were going so strongly that they can get back to that.
In 3 months, when they're out of Gold Peak tea, let's see what your attitude is.
Well,
it's on sale $1.99 at Wegmans.
All bets are off at that point. All right. Thanks, guys. Back to chasing down the rumors. Keep an eye on Hockey Buzz today. I'll be updating everything. It's just very low sleep right now. We're already in that mode. Remember, without the buzz, it is just